We are going to start off with a little bit of summary of where I was in the last video. In the last video, we were building out the Xano side of doing a favorites approach for products in a list based on each user. I created a couple extra products from last time just so we have more to work with. And we have our favorite cross-reference table, which cross-references a product with a user. Just as an example, if I come in here, I can pick a cutting board for Cindy Harrison, and now that becomes a favorite for her. And then we had the API set up to do a get of favorites. Just do a real quick summary on this. We get the auth token will be Cindy. Okay, and you'll see that the iPhone and the headphones and the cutting board, like we had, are the ones that are favorites, and the rest are false. So we've got this set up on the Xano side, and where I was going to head next is to build out the AppGyver side of things. But I think before we do that, since we're in the Xano side, we just as well build the post or the add of a favorite and the delete of a favorite. And I'm going to do these maybe a little bit different than how I've named stuff in the past, a little bit more in a REST standard using the capabilities. We're going to go ahead and add an API endpoint here, but we're going to use the standard REST HTTP capabilities. So this first one, we're going to also call it favorites, even though our get is called favorites, and it's going to be a post. And we're going to set the user authentication. And you'll see, I'm going to back out here for a second just so you can see this. You'll see that the post is part of the favorites group. And instead of calling it favorites add and favorites list and favorites delete and having separate groups of each of a single item, this will group them together, and we will just change their functionality as we're supposed to with just the HTTP verbs that represent it. And just to show what that looks like, I'm going to go ahead and create the favorites for delete. And we'll do user authentication on that as well. Okay, so now when we come back out, you'll see that they're all grouped together. And we're going to build the post and the delete capability. Okay, so to be able to post a new favorite, we need to have a product ID. And we don't need the user ID because these are authenticated APIs, which means the user ID will be passed in with the authorization token that we use. So let's go ahead and just do the simple, since we're doing a post, which means we're adding, the easiest thing that we would do is just assume we're going to do a straight up add of a favorite. It picks product ID because it matches, that's from the input. The user ID, we have to get rid of the 0 so that it'll show us all these options. We're going to pick auth and pick ID, and then create it as it is. So right now, oh, I always forget that. I like to rename favorite. We'll call it favorite item since it's a single thing. And then we'll make it a favorite item down here. So at this point, if I were to run this, I've already got the auth token. Let's switch these around. I need to see my database real quick. What does Cindy Harrison have? She does not have number 5. I'm going to switch my tabs. There we go. So I'm going to make this an add for number 5. And when we run it, looks like we were successful. We're going to go ahead and take a look. And there it is. But now there's still a problem here. And I could have done this right the first time, but I wanted you to see what the problem was. So if I go back and run this again with 5, I'll end up with a duplicate because there's no code that stops it from duplicating. Go ahead and delete the duplicate. And just go ahead and delete both of the number 5s. So here's what we're going to do for that. We are going to add a database request, and we're going to query all records for favorite. And we're going to look for anything that has a favorite product ID equal to the input of product ID. And we're also going to do an and say a favorite user ID equal to the auth ID. So there's one other thing we want to do here. I usually forget this, but since we know we're going to get one record back, instead of returning a list, we're going to return it as a single. And that way we don't have to deal with an array of one item. We'll now just get a JSON object. And then we'll call that item. Okay, so I've got, move this to the top. So I'm getting back a favorite item if it exists. Something new that's been, it might not be too new, I haven't used this in a little while, a few weeks, maybe a month, but they've got it so you can insert a new entry below item. So I can click here, and instead of it always being at the bottom and having to drag it up, I can go ahead and just add it where I want it. So we're doing data manipulation here as a conditional. And so what I need to do is figure out if I found the query, if the query returned a favorite. Since we're adding one, if it didn't return a favorite, I want to add it. And if it did, I do not want to add it because it's already there. So let's see, we're doing an add. So what we're going to do is favorite item, and we're going to see with a filter if this is empty. So if favorite item is empty, if that equals, spell true correctly, that equals true. Okay, and then it's important that after you fill this out, you save it before you go to these adds, because currently it won't save itself and you'll lose the if condition. So we save that. If the favorite item is empty, then I am going to just take this add record that we already did and drag it. So I think I missed. There. Okay. So if the favorite item is empty, I'm going to add the record. And if it is not empty and it exists, I'm going to do nothing. And either way, I'll have a favorite item. Either I'll have found one or I'll have added one. So now let's go ahead and run this. I got rid of both my 5s, but I'm going to run it. And we're going to see that my 5 was added as number 55. If I go back and run it again, notice it still says 55. And if we refresh here, we didn't add a duplicate. Okay, so now we've got a somewhat foolproof post to add a product or add a favorite to a product. Now let's go back to the delete and do the same thing. Okay, I'll do this a little bit quicker, but we're gonna query all records. Maybe I'm doing it too quick because before I query something, I need to know what the product ID is. So I've got the product ID coming in. I'm going to query all records. This will be favorite item again. Come back to the filter. And we are going to do the same exact thing, which is product ID equal to the input. And then do the and for the product user ID equal to the auth ID, so the user that's logged in. Okay. So then I want to add data manipulation conditional. I'm doing the if. And I'm going to say if favorite item. And this one we're treating the opposite, and we'll go through that here in a sec, is empty. So if the favorite item is empty, if that is false, so if it's not empty, I'll save this so I don't lose it. If it's not empty, then I want to remove it. So that will be database, delete, favorite, and the field name that we're going to delete is going to come from favorite item .id. So I'm comparing the ID value in the favorites table with the item I just pulled out, and this will delete it. I'm going to go back in because I forgot to change this. And I like to keep both the query and the delete the same, because then I can come down here and use the same variable, and it just keeps things simple. I always get the same data structure back. Let's go ahead and look, make sure that we've got, okay, so I've got a 5. So what I want to do is run and debug with 5, and I blew it. Okay, param field value. Let's look at the debugger. I messed up something in here. Favorite item. Probably has to do with the ID. See here. One value. Favorite item.id is good. Oh, I bet you I know what I did. Okay, it's what I told you to remember, which is I'm doing a query all records, and it's not finding my ID because it's in an array, because I did not come down here and change my list to a single. So that's what it looks like when you forget to change your list to a single when you know you're getting one item. Because I was doing a delete for favorite item.id, and I would have had to treat it like an array otherwise. So now I'm a lot more confident that when I run it, I will get back deleted. And then if I try to delete again, there's nothing to delete. Okay, so we're good there. Query all records, we get a favorite. If it's not empty, we delete it. And either way, yep, okay. So now we've got both our APIs ready. Technically, we've got all 3 of them ready. So we're going to set these up in AppGyver. And this will all allow us to manage the favorites for products. Let's go ahead and start with the data and see how quickly we can get stuff set up here. REST API, we will call this favorites. API, manage product favorites. Let's go grab the resource URL. And then I also need to put in my authorization header. it'll be text, and it's not static. I'll go ahead and save what I have there. So the first thing we're going to set up is the test for getting, and I'm going to need the authorization token, which I'll just use the copy button here for the one we're already using. I'll change that to static text. There we go. Okay, so I've got bearer space and the authorization token like usual. We ran the test. We got our results back. We got a mix of true and false. I'm going to set the schema from the response for that. Okay. So instead of going in and doing some of the screens, I'm going to show you what makes it a little bit easier, and it's still following the HTTP REST standards. Now that I've got the base set up and everything is under favorites, which is this, now what I can do is just come in directly to create record post and turn that on. And so the base already has the authorization header, so I don't need to put it here. I do need a query parameter because I've specified product ID. The first one, the label can be anything. The key needs to be exactly matching what's in Xano. It is a number. It is not static. We're going to save that. And whenever you hit save, you have to come back because it moves you to the base and go to the create record post again. And we're going to test this one. Okay. The one thing we have to do is when the record properties show up here, even though we don't have anything, come over to the schema. It's getting messed up by the use get schema. Set it to no request body. And when you come back to test, you'll have just what you need, which is just the authorization and the product ID in this case. So let me give this one a test. Ooh, hit the wrong buttons. And then a product ID. Let's see, we're doing the create. So let's do a 5. Switch back over here real quick and look at the database. Okay, so there's no 5. We'll do that as a test. And we got that back, and we're going to set the schema from the response and save it. And then come back over here to Xano, and there's 5. So we know our API not only works from Xano, but it also works from AppGyver. Now we have one more API to set up, which is the delete. Go ahead and turn that one on. We have the same pattern here. Product ID is the relevant piece. Key needs to match what's in Xano. It's a number. Okay. We'll save that and then click back down here once it's done saving. We're going to go grab authorization token, and we're going to go test. Bearer space, a product ID. We'll do our worthy efforts here. So 5 exists. 5 is what I want to delete. Okay, status is okay. This one doesn't return anything. It just comes back as okay. And if we come over here, let's see that it worked, and it did. And if I run it again, yep, we'll set that schema, which is nothing. So now we have the ability to get them, add them, and delete them set up in the data. Now let's come to our screen and build out the visual pieces of this. So I know I'm going to want a scroll area. I'm going to try to be good and name these, which will be product scroll. And I'll catch most of them, but if not, I'll go back and name things so that it's easier to see what's over here. Okay, so we're probably just going to do name price, and a favorites icon. So I'm going to pick a row. Actually, I need to be better than that. I'm going to pick a container. And the container will be product container. And then we'll put a row in the container. And a row by default gets 2 cells. But we're going to need 3. So I'm going to go over to style and add a 3rd cell. And I want these to be a little bit bigger. Okay. Be picky here. So we've got what will be name, price, and favorites icons. Okay, so that is getting there. I'm going to do a little bit of renaming. This will be product row. This will be name cell. Price cell. And favorite. Favorite cell. Go ahead and save it. Okay, so now just to build this out really quickly, we need to put in text to that cell, text to this cell, and let me just clean those up a little bit. For now, just so we take up some space and kind of see what's going to be here. And then in this one, we need some icons. It'll be product name, the price, and then we're going to put in an icon. We're going to duplicate it. We are going to find the heart. And we're going to find the empty heart. There we go. Okay, so we still got a fair amount of work to do here, but we're starting to get it laid out correctly. So before we can do our repeating effect, we're going to need to create a data variable. And the data variable is going to hook up to the data resource that we have called favorites. Now, normally when I have a list, I want to leave the delay in there so it automatically refreshes itself. But this one's going to be working a little bit differently. And so we're going to remove the delay. And I will walk through what we're doing in place of that as we get further down the favorites path. But this is going to help us so that when we click on and off on favorites, that they work correctly and visually they function well. We're going to rename that to just favorites. And then for the authorization, I'm going to hard code this, but I'm going to put it as an app variable so that I can use it for all of the API calls I need to do. And if you've watched any of my videos, you probably already do the same thing. Auth token, it'll be text. And we're going to go ahead and hard code an initial value, because for this video, it's not going to change. Okay. There we go. We've got our data variable, and I'm going to go grab the auth token. So at this point, we're getting a collection of data records that are the products with favorites. And so we need to come to the product container, and we're going to pick the data variable. And now we're starting to get our repeat. And I think the one of many things I still need to do is clean up this favorite cell. See if we can get it with the cell layout. There. I've got everything centered, both up and down as well as left and right. And that'll be important because we're only going to show one of these at a time, and we want it to be centered in the middle of that cell. Okay, go ahead and save that. So now what we're going to do is assign the real variables, property of data item and repeat. This will be the name. This one we're going to do as a formula. We're still going to make it, get rid of the hard-coded one, currently repeated data item, price. What we're going to do is put a dollar sign at the beginning so it looks like real dollars. Okay, and then for this one, we want to show the icon that represents the current state of the favorite. And that is under advanced properties, visible. So we're going to want, for this one, favorite. So if it is a favorite, it'll be true and it'll be visible. We want to reverse that on this one. So we need to use a formula instead of property of a data item. And we need to have, there's two ways you can do it. You can either use not or an exclamation point. They mean the same thing, but not is a little more descriptive. And we're going to put that in there. So it's the opposite of current favorite, which means if it's a favorite, this one won't show. Okay. Actually, we're probably getting pretty close. Guess I need to remirror my screen. And we'll see how much of this works and how much doesn't. And then we'll go from there. Okay. Well, looky there. We have stuff showing. So I'm going to go back and compare to Xano. Pardon me. iPhone headphone cutting board. iPhone headphone cutting board. Okay. And now what I need to do, because right now if I tap on any of these, nothing happens because we haven't attached that. So what we're going to do is start with that heart. This one, when we tap it, so it means that something already exists. When we tap it, we want to delete. So I am going to drag out the delete record. And what we're going to delete is favorites. It's the only one we have. App variable auth token, we're going to save that. Product ID is going to be property of data item and repeat. We want the ID of the product, and then our queries will do the rest. So this will delete the record. And then I want to come over to this one, click on the empty heart, and we want to create a record. Be pretty similar. We're going to do data variable, app auth token, and then product ID is property of data item, current ID, same model here. This will feed the product ID we need, so that will add one. Now the issue we have, pardon me, is if we click on one of these, it'll change it on the database side, but we need to make it visually change instantly, and then we need to refresh the screen. So I can show you here that if I click on iPhone, which is a favorite, you'll notice that it took the click. And if I come back over here and refresh, you'll see that the third line down, 46, disappears. But this still stays as a favorite. So that's what we're going to fix next. And to do that, we've got a couple of things we need to do. If you remember in the variables for the data variable, I got rid of the delay here. Technically, if I would have left that delay, when I clicked on this button, it would have waited some portion of that delay, and then it would have refreshed the icon to be correct. But it would have had a delay, and that will confuse the user. And so because of that, I've removed the delay from here, and we're going to approach this in a different manner. Hopefully it'll work well for us. I am going to add something called set repeated item value. So this lets me programmatically force the value of what will be the favorites field of the current item. I want to come in here. And let me see if I have this right. Here we go, formula. I think I can just do favorite, if I can do it this way. Favorite equals false, it's not going to like it. Okay. Set repeated item value. Oh, that's what I needed. Okay. Current favorite. So I just want to set current favorite, not the whole thing, to false. And then what I need to do is I need to get the record again. So I've made the change, but nowhere am I getting the whole list again to refresh it. And so after the delete works, I want to get favorites again. Auth token, that's what I'm going for. And after I get the record collection, I also need to set the data variable, just like you do in the main section of the page where we have the data variable. And I want to set favorites, and I want to do that from output of another node, which is the get record collection. Pick the collection. Okay, so as soon as I tap the solid heart, I'm going to change the visible to false, or change the current favorite to false. And then delete it, and then get the record collection and show it again. Let's see if that much works. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but maybe not. Okay, so we're going to go with headphones. There you go. And then we'll try cutting board. And if you notice, it doesn't have any flashing. If I come back over to Xano, Cindy will have no favorites. So now we're going to do this exact same model for setting a favorite. So we're going to move this over a little. I know I need to, where am I going? I need to get my record collection. I need to set my data, set my data variable. And then I need to come over to the installed tab and set repeated item value. Connect all these up, and then we will give them the values they need. Okay, so set repeated needs to be current favorite to true because it doesn't exist. So now I'm going to tell it it does. And then we're going to create the record and then get the record collection again so we can get the refreshed value. And then I want to set the data variable, output of another node. Okay, so once again, when I now click on the empty one, I'll be adding. So I want to immediately set it to be true so that it shows the full heart. And then, so the user won't see a delay. And then behind the scenes, I'll create the record in the database through Xano. I'll go back and get the list again, and it'll show it as the valid true. I'll set the data, and it'll refresh without flashing on the screen. That's what I'm telling myself. So let's see how we do here. There we go. So the instant nature of this happens because I force the setting of favorites, and then behind the scenes, it'll refresh that so that the value really exists. So that's what eliminates the need to have like a wait spinner or some other kind of subpar user experience. And there you go. You can see we have all those. Just to have fun, I'm going to delete all of them and refresh. And then let's see if we can't add one again. Just doing a little bit of testing just to make sure. Okay, there we go. Let me think. I think we have most of what I was looking to accomplish with favorites. The key to this is not really the Xano stuff, even though we eliminated the potential of duplicates and such with how we did Xano as we add favorites. But really the key to this one was the set repeated item value and then calling out after that. So instantly set it so that it reflects on the screen, and then set it behind the scenes in Xano after the fact, and then refresh it. Hopefully that'll make sense. This should give you the ability to do a products-based favorite approach pretty easily without having to do kind of anything with components or anything more complicated.